Stephen. Hello, Becky. So hopefully, if you just switch your camera on for a few minutes and wave so that we can make use of the Zoom platform, which is why we do this way. Oh, good. This is great. Hi, Sierra. Hi, Tara. Sarah, Nicole, and do feel free, please, to use chat. Everybody has chat. So do say hello to each other, introduce yourself. At some point, Jane and I are going to divide these into little breakout rooms, and you'll just network with somebody you've probably never met before for 10 minutes. We actually had 89 people register for this session, and so we're expecting about 60 people, which means that you're probably all Zoomologists now. You all know how this works. That you hit the little arrow the right or left of your screen to be able to scroll through, I was going to say zoom through, and see who's here. We have lots of people here. Welcome, everybody. Where's everybody from? Do we have anybody from outside of Canada or the US? Anybody? Turn your camera on. Let us know in chat. Jane, can you watch chat for me while I keep admitting people? That would be great. Thank you. Oh, there we are. Okay. We're in California. Well, welcome to you all. My name's Rebecca Jones. I'm with Dysart & Jones. Jay Dysart is somewhere in this mass of people. There she is. She's waving. And we are delighted to be hosting these chats for SLACanada, and delighted to have so many of you here. The session is now recording. All the previous chats are on Dysart & Jones. We also put them up on the SLACanada Connect, on SLA Connect, of course. There are both podcasts that you can download and listen to as you walk around the block. I was going to say on your way to work, as you walk around the block. And there's also webinars, so you can see who was there. And now I would like to introduce Juanita Richardson. Juanita, many of you probably know, she is a longtime SLA member and has been a fellow for many years. And so as a fellow and stepping forward, volunteered. I'm just so grateful to her to lead the new SLACanada in its inaugural year. And of course, Jane Dysart's doing the programming. Who better, the programming queen, to do our programming. So Juanita, I will turn it over to you, will I? Or would you like me to introduce the panelists?
Why don't I just say a few words of welcome, and then I'll turn it back to you. How's that?
That's great.
Excellent. Thank you, Rebecca. And of course, I specifically want to thank Dysart & Jones, who are our Zoom sponsors, led by the inimitable Jane Dysart, who is, as Rebecca says, our queen of programming here in Canada. She's working specifically as our programming director for national initiatives across Canada, and facilitated by regional programming directors, including Therese, Karen, Jim, and Bronwyn, who I think are all, if they're not speaking today, they're certainly all on the line. So thank you. Wanting to remind you that these SLACanada chatnars are open to all SLA members, whether you belong to the Canadian chapter or not, as well as non-members. We're using these chatnars as an opportunity to engage information professionals well, across Canada and really around the world. I did see one person who said they're from, it was Karen DeWitt.
Yes, she's from Wales.
South Wales in the UK. So we do have international people here, like outside of North America, which is great. You are welcome to join us on these chatnars. Do keep an eye on the SLACanada Connect forum, where you'll see our list of events, as well as our board meetings. Our board meetings are open to members to sit in on as well. I think that's all I had to say. I don't think I have any other highlights for you today.
Okay.
So I'll turn it back to Rebecca.
Okay. The reason that we are not running this as a webinar, which means that it's probably not as slick and lovely professional as you're used to, I was just on a webinar on my lunch today, and I have to say, I just find it so frustrating. I can't see who the other participants are. It was a Zoom closed webinar. I realize there are some times when you can see who the other participants are. I can't chat with anybody, and so that's why Jane and I, and of course with Juanita's permission, chose to do it in this rather messy way, which I can see somebody's having trouble getting in, but I'll get back to them as soon as I can. In the meantime, do let me introduce our panelists, and I will also try to spotlight them as I do that. So I'm going to start with the first one I see, which is Laura. Laura, I'm spotlighting you. This is Laura Fu. Thank you so much, Laura. Laura is with Red Hat, and she's Digital Asset Manager. Is that correct, Laura?
That is correct.
That's great. Okay. That's right. She's got her little red hat, which covers up her camera. Thank you. Thank you. And we have Jim Miller. So when I do the spotlight, can everybody see the person? Does it? Okay, that works. Okay, good. This is good. And I'm going to spotlight Jim Miller. There he is. Jim, he's got files behind him because Jim is, he's the Connect Public Affairs, where he's the principal. And you were in Ottawa?
That's correct, yes.
Jim? Laura, are you in Toronto? I forgot to ask you.
I am in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, but I grew up in Ottawa County, Michigan. So.
There we are. Okay, North Carolina, fantastic.
Yes.
We are, of course, in Toronto, and Juanita's in Collingwood. So, and next I have Katherine Scott. Katherine, I'm spotlighting you. There, everybody see Katherine? Katherine, thanks so much for joining us. Katherine's with Ryerson University, where she is Prospect Development Officer, and Ryerson, of course, is right in downtown Toronto, right in the hub of it. And then we have Stephanie Lemieux. There we go. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Stephanie is the President and Principal Consultant with Dovecot. Most importantly, she is Chair of the Taxonomy Boot Camp and has been doing a fabulous job with Jane for that. Bless you, I'd say, for doing that. And Karen Bleakley. Now I have to find Karen because she's all in darkness. Okay, where are you, Karen? I can find you. Just a minute. Oh dear. Okay, just a minute. I have to cancel this. Karen Bleakley, I found you. There we go. I'm going to. Oh, see, it won't. Oh, no. Okay, so Karen cannot use her camera because Karen works for Genetec. She's proposal manager for Genetec, and I can't spotlight her because she has no camera on. She's all in darkness, okay? It's okay.
Hey, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Karen. And I guess, did I get everybody? Any other speakers that I didn't introduce? Fantastic. Okay, here we go. Juanita is going to be our moderator today, so I'm going to spotlight her first. There we are. And start us off, Juanita.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. Well, I was just hoping that each one of our speakers today would describe for us in more detail their role and the competencies that they bring to the table in their role that they think they learned as a special librarian. So can we perhaps start with Karen?
Sure. Hey, everybody. So I just want to preface this. Can everyone hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, I just want to preface this by explaining the darkness, that I am not antisocial, because as every good librarian, I'm extremely social and sociable. But I do work for Genetec Inc., which is a security software company, and therefore not very Zoom friendly right now. So it's just a platform issue with us. So to start off with Juanita's question and around competencies. So I graduated from library school a very long time ago and worked in corporate libraries for all of my career, right up until corporate libraries started severely downsizing here in Montreal. And then I found myself looking around for what else I could do with my competencies and my skills. So I found Genetec, which is an awesome company headquartered here in Montreal. And they were looking for a proposal manager. I had never been a proposal manager. I had never worked, frankly, in sales. But this is what they were looking for, and it was somebody who was already there who knew me through a networking of volunteer work, so that works, and said, hey, Karen's looking for something and maybe her skills fit this. And so I looked at the job description, and the only skill I did not have was a degree in engineering. So I went in and interviewed anyway, because I just decided every other skill I had. And when I went in and started talking to them about what the role was, proposal management, as many of you I'm sure have bid teams in your companies, is about responding to RFPs, RFQs, RFIs, requests for proposals. It's about putting together a document, a response to what the requirements are. It's a lot of writing, and it's a lot of communication, and it's a lot of being able to get a point, first of all, respond to compliance issues, but also create narratives of what your company is and what you sell and how you do that. The other part of it was that, and I quickly brought them around to content management, because why reinvent the wheel? So let's create a repository of this content, and let's put everything around it that we all know should be there. And again, I'm working with a bunch of engineers. So content management, knowledge management, not in their purview at all. And so I've been there 4 years now. And at this point, it's my skills around my librarian skills, right? My content management skills, my knowledge management skills that are helping us create this wealth of content that we can reuse and leverage to sell our products. So those are my competencies, and writing and editing.
It's fantastic. Juanita, can I interrupt?
Please, please.
I just did. I was just going to say, Karen, what does Genetec actually sell?
So we sell security software, which is video surveillance software, access control software, and license plate recognition. And these days, a whole bunch of analytics software around facial recognition. So we have a security platform. So you know when you go into a building and you've got your security guard sitting there, and he's looking generally at monitors? Well, our software is probably on those monitors. It's what runs the whole security platform.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
it's really
and it's
fantastic.
a great little local Montreal-based company. We're about 20 years old now, so it's still a young company. Yeah.
Well, and good for you. I'd like to bottle you, Karen. By the way, Greta from your library school days says hello. Greta is here.
Yay.
So Karen, I just have a small follow-up question, because you said that the one competency or asset that you did not have when you applied for the job was the degree in engineering. So how did you convince them to take a chance on you?
Honestly, in the interview, I just explained knowledge management to them. I just said that's frankly more important than the technical. And so to be fair to them, every new employee at Genetec has to undergo training on our products. So I learned how to, never mind the engineering, but it was a 4-week intensive course on the software and learning how to basically configure the software, run the software. So you had to have a bit of a technical brain. And my brain hurt at the end of the 4 weeks, but it really was explaining that in the proposal management role, that as long as I did that training and understood the products well enough, that I would be able to write and create this content around them.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Jim, same question. What competencies do you think you brought to the table? Of course, you run your own business, but just please share with us more about how this role developed for you and what competencies you're using on a regular basis.
Sure. For me, this is sort of a second career. So I actually started in politics and government, and was using a lot of my, and then went back to library school. So graduated recently in 2009. And I'm using the competencies I have now with regard to search, knowledge management, competitive intelligence, particularly in the use of government or non-market information. So there's a lot of disorganization within government information, shockingly. No surprise to anyone, and helping people to find that information. But also at the same point in time, also helping companies to better utilize better information for decision-making purposes. So a lot of the competencies I use are around, search and looking the right information. Also the analytical skills around using that information and distinguishing trends and patterns as well, in order for the people to use that for decision-making. And you'd be shocked at how information the management skills are useful in sort of policy development, in the sense that, as more and more policy is shifting towards sort of evidence-based policy, just being able to find the surveys, research, data points, various pieces of information that are used in that decision-making process is a significant skill to have. And secondly, just in sort of data organization, there's a lot more demand for that type of skill set. When you look at, just even now, the number of programs that are being run that require, be able to track significant amounts of information, and looking at how other jurisdictions are doing policy development, it's important. So I think the skill sets for me, the keys are sort of analytical, and then communications as well. So being able to communicate the findings and answer the so what question of the findings. So sort of what, based on the competitive intelligence, is also quite important. I mean, I would say this is a second career, and spent my early days as an advisor to numerous cabinet ministers at both the federal and provincial level here in Canada. And, it's a fast-paced environment, but having that array of information and being able to find it quickly is a great skill to have, to be able to use it in communications and or policy development.
Fantastic, Jim. Thanks. So what I'm keen to understand is, if I understand correctly, you're already working within government, working in competitive intelligence within government, if I understand, and that you chose to go back to library school. So how was that decision informed?
So myself, actually, even working in politics, I've actually always been, sort of involved in sort of the information management side of things. So I did a lot of work on opposition research, policy research, and as well as just information management around voter intention and the actual practical retail politics, running of politics. So to me, library school seemed to be and then of course I read constantly and in the field, but to me it was something that would actually greatly help to do that, because a lot of the stuff that I needed from the policy development standpoint is much easier to work on, for me, because I can find information that other people can't find in that mishmash of government information.
Right. Thank you. Fantastic. Rebecca, did you want to leap in there?
Did you know that?
Yeah, I saw your face.
I know. You can see me, right? I was going to say, you know what really leapt out at me, Jim, was that too often we don't emphasize our skills as advisors. And you were, in your first life, you were an advisor, and certainly in the role that you have right now in the company that you've carved out, you're not only surfacing, like digging up the nuggets and surfacing them, but influencing people, not only to take the contract, but to act upon the guidance that you're bringing them, right? Yeah,
certainly. I mean, I think from an advisory role, I think it's important. I'll also make 2 points on this one. One, with the advisory role, is around finding where government funding is. So I help clients find, money from government programs, and there's a myriad of programs, but it's hard for people. And even in government, I found that there's a lot of misunderstanding with, what the funding represented. The second part is from a communication standpoint. I think that the library part actually helped me to sort of advocate on behalf of people. And I think I've said this ad nauseum. Librarians are the worst advocates for themselves. And when I worked for the Minister of Human Resources and Skills Development, and we had a consultation around digital skills for the digital economy. And I thought, librarians would be great to actually make a submission to actually say what skills librarians have to offer. But I had to pull teeth to get, people to actually make an official submission on behalf of a library association. So, we have to really get better at sort of advocating the skills that we have are transferable and are, quite knowledgeable, useful in that advisory capacity.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is, one of the things that many of you speaking today bring to the fore, which is, advocacy is just a lovely word for sales.
Yes, true enough.
Shall I highlight Stephanie or Katherine?
Well, I think there's a follow-up question for Jim
sure.
from Sharon Lemieux
For
in
you.
the chat. So are the dual language requirements for government work a special challenge?
Oh,
And do you think you miss things in either language?
good for you, Sharon.
Hi, Sharon. How are you?
Sharon.
It's good that she's got that, being an American, that she speaks. Anyhow, for me, I speak French, not fluently, but fairly well. But it is hard because written French is different than spoken French, so it is harder to actually catch things. And so the way that there's slight nuances, that particularly is with working with federal government documents, but most of the stuff is actually done in English primarily. And then at the provincial level, it's mostly all English, so it's not as much of a difficulty. But it's certainly at the federal level, the difficulty is not so much with the government documents, but with the sort of third-party documents.
Third party, yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, great.
Okay, so Rebecca, you're going to highlight Stephanie next?
I'm spotlighting you, Stephanie. Here we come.
Excellent. Okay.
There she is. I know.
So Stephanie, tell us about the competencies that you think librarians bring to the table in the role that you perform.
Sure. So I actually am both a librarian and an entrepreneur. So I started a consulting firm a while ago. We do information management, search, taxonomy development, lots of different things. We're a little team of 4 or 5 people, all librarians. So we're a fun group who like to help problem solving when it comes to knowledge and information management. And I think the fact that we're librarians really makes us good consultants. We learn in library school how to do the library interview. How do you get someone to explain the research question to you? And that's basically what we're doing when we're helping to develop information management systems or building taxonomies, is we're coaxing information out of people to describe. I would say communications one, say that it splits into categories. One is, can you guys hear me?
You're back. We lost you for a minute there.
Hello?
Oh, are you there, Stephanie?
Hello?
I think she lost us too.
I think she lost us. All right, so I'm going to communicate with her offline privately. And Katherine, are you ready? Okay, I'm just gonna highlight you and then there we go. Okay. Oh.
Yeah, I'm good to go.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Katherine. So let's proceed with Katherine then, and the special competencies that special librarians bring to the table in your role at Ryerson.
Sure. So I'll start with how I kind of got into this role. My education background was in international development. And you know, I needed a job, so I ended up in a fundraising job at Doctors Without Borders, and that's sort of how I landed on prospect research. Many of us in the field got into it sort of by falling backwards into it and finding that it was a really satisfying career path for us. So I ended up going to library school after I started working in prospect research, and now this is what I do for Ryerson University. So essentially, the job is to find money, philanthropic dollars primarily, occasionally government funding. So Jim was actually working on some of that today and finding it particularly challenging. You might have been very helpful to me this afternoon. So we're looking for philanthropic dollars to support the mission of the university, either faculty projects, endowed chairs, buildings, and you know, anything else that a university might need money for, student scholarships, for example. So, you know, in that role, I'm doing a lot of lead generation primarily, but in prospect research, or what we'll call prospect development, these are all words for fundraising. It might be called advancement, philanthropy. It means private money. The donor database is something I work on. I work on privacy and information management, knowledge management. So those kinds of, you know, very specifically information professional skills have come in very handy in my role. The main librarian skill I think that I bring to the job is reference. So, you know, it's been mentioned already, you know, finding out what the client is asking for, finding out what they say versus what they actually want, and getting them the information that they need, information that is reliable and verified. Writing is a key skill because we need to communicate large amounts of information to leadership, and it has to be preferably short and sweet. And we don't want anyone to be embarrassed if they're meeting with a top philanthropist for, you know, asking for a large amount of money, and we don't want any embarrassing situations for our university leadership. So it's really important for us to be able to communicate. You know, there's a team of us to be able to communicate very clearly what considerations need to be part of negotiating a gift. More recently, data analytics is an increasingly important part of our roles, and often prospect research professionals find themselves as the translators, sort of not necessarily executing analytical studies, but helping with the interpretation. So taking complex information again and translating it for individuals who don't have a background in analytics to make sure that it's used in a way that's effective. Being with nonprofit organizations in the back of our minds, we're always making sure that we think about cost effectiveness and making sure that our donor dollars are managed in the most transparent and accountable and efficient way possible. So we want to make sure that we're not, for example, pursuing something that's not going to be fruitful and bring money into our organizations. We have an association for prospect researchers as well. You may have heard of it. It's called APRA, and there's a Canadian chapter of which I'm president, and we bring together different prospect researchers across organizations. In universities and large hospital foundations, you'll find teams of prospect researchers, but in smaller nonprofit organizations, you'll often find one or a person who has prospect research as part of their overall role. Not everyone is an information professional, but I would say at least half of us have a library science background. In terms of soft skills, one thing that's really important is, you know, it's been mentioned already, but advocacy. We have to make sure that the fundraisers that we work for, who are front-facing sort of sales people, understand the value that we're bringing, that we're sort of taking a neutral perspective or a more objective perspective on information that's presented to us about individuals, and that we will sometimes deliver the bad news, you know, an individual or foundation that's not able to make a gift, or that there is a reputational concern that needs to be addressed. The way it works at Ryerson University is I manage a handful of relationships with faculty-based and central university clients, and I help them with their fundraising goals. And that's me.
Okay, thanks, Katherine. Now you too, like Jim, already worked in prospect research, in your case, prospect research, before you went back to library school. So tell us about that decision.
Yeah, so I felt that, you know, when I was doing the work, I could see myself continuing this pathway. There, you know, we're talking about career paths. There are jobs, especially in the larger city centers, for prospect research professionals. It seemed like something that would suit my needs. I'm among 10 young kids, and we live in Toronto, and I wanted something where I could have some good work-life balance, but where my job would be interesting enough for me. And you know, I get paid to read the news every morning. This is a real perk to the job. So I thought I needed to further my competencies in information management to be able to take on more leadership roles. And so I went back to library school part-time. And when I was finishing library school at the University of Toronto, I was able to take it on a senior manager position at the Canadian Red Cross, which allowed me to sort of execute on a lot of that. I don't think that I would be at Ryerson University if I didn't have that background, because I know that although it's not a requirement, it's a huge advantage to have a formal background in library science to do this kind of work. And actually Ryerson University asked me to show my grade transcripts, which I've never had at a job before. But they do verify that you are who you say you are. So I found it really helpful. I liked going to library school later on, because I felt that the faculty was actually in transition and trying to make sure that what the students were learning was relevant to the current careers that information professionals were heading into. So I feel like I got a really good grounding in, you know, everything from management to digital skills to, you know, the more traditional, like cataloging, and everything has been applicable in my work.
Fantastic, thank you.
Fabulous.
Rebecca, did you have something you wanted to ask?
I did not. You
Oh,
asked
okay.
it already.
Okay.
But I did want to tell you that Stephanie, like all the rest of us, you know, rebooted her router, and she's back.
Oh, good.
We'd like to pick up with her again.
Okay. Very good.
I just, I plugged directly into the router, like I'm jacked into the matrix now. It should be all right.
There we go. We all understand that.
Okay, so we'll pick it up then, Stephanie. So tell us again about the competencies and how you got where you are.
Sure. So as I mentioned, but I'm not sure you heard, so I'll repeat it very briefly. I run a consulting firm that I started with a bunch of librarian friends. So we do consulting around taxonomy, metadata, search, document management, etc. And I would say some of the core competencies, communications has been raised already a number of times, but I think I mean it less in a writing and presenting way and more in a knowing how to interview someone and get someone to explain themselves in a way that you can take and translate into requirements or into structures. So I actually have a bachelor's degree in anthropology, and while I was doing that bachelor's, I had no idea I was going to go to library school, but it turned out to be really useful because anthropology is all about, you know, trying to understand how other people think and get people to express their culture and their thought patterns and their mental models. And I use that every day in my consulting work. So being able to get people to explain to you in a way that you can then distill into technical requirements or into other artifacts is one of the core things that I use on a daily basis. Another one is communicating in a way that people find engaging. So I don't know about you, but a lot of people I work with find taxonomy and metadata a little bit boring. So trying to figure out how to make that more exciting and get people to actually show up to meetings at a place like the International Monetary Fund, which is where I'm contracting right now. And these are, you know, fancy PhD economists who have probably much better things to do with their time right now than to talk about ontologies or whatever it is I'm working on. But they actually do show up because we try to make it engaging and we really try to bring their needs into the conversation. And again, that whole mental model description. Anyone is excited to explain to you how they think. So that's a really big piece of it. Another one is systems thinking, which is a course I took again before I knew I was really going to be a library science person, and being able to think about how all these things interconnect is really important when you're dealing with really vast information management ecosystems that sometimes have 27 different platforms and play in various types of technologies and all these kinds of silos, and trying to create bridges between different groups and people. That was a huge piece that I still refer to, and I still keep the manual on my desk and refer to things from that. What I wish I had learned more about in library school is politicking. So I'm trying to get better at understanding office politics and hierarchies and how you get budget and people to pay attention to things at the right time so that you can get things accomplished in shorter timelines. And then I do a lot of work these days that leans more towards data science. So taxonomy used to be a lot more about linguistics and how people talk and write about things just in their documents and language. And now we're trying to teach machines how to understand how we talk. And not only that, but translate that into meaningful knowledge artifacts. So if I'm an economist and I'm trying to figure out how to help Italy with its COVID-19 problems, well, I need to know what all of the other policy recommendations that we've made in previous pandemics, such as Ebola or SARS. Do we have those documents? How can the machine learning read those documents and take what it knows about economic structures and translate that into something for an economist to use? So that's one thing that I'm starting to skill up now, is in data science and computer science, so that I can be more part of those initiatives as both a librarian and a knowledge manager.
Right. Right.
That's fascinating.
It is.
So, sorry, you go ahead first, Rebecca.
I'm so sorry. I know I'm just such a, and I control the mute button too, so. But,
Power.
you know, but I'm just fascinated because I'm also hearing, you know, the similarities too between the work that you do with Jim and Katherine and Karen, and I'm sure we're going to have with Laura too, in understanding your markets too. So, you know, for those in academic libraries or in, you know, other types of in corporate or in organization places, they call them clients. For you, they're markets or their potential markets, and understanding them, which of course your anthropology degree, in understanding their thinking. And Stephen Abram just said he found the same thing with his anthropology degree. Ethnographic interviewing skills and tools using behaviors translate really well into user experience and user design. And you've probably met, oh my goodness, what's his name? Snowden, David Snowden.
Dave, yeah.
Right. So many of the knowledge management world also have anthropology as an undergrad. I'd be interested in the chat if anybody besides Stephen. I knew that Stephen had anthropology. The other thing I just wanted to comment was that Leah, welcome Leah, said about politicking. Yes, politics. How do you say diplomatically, you are not the user? So how do you envision other people making use of this? This has driven her nuts. Yes, let's all give a round of applause to Leah. We're all there with you. Any comments for either one of them?
Yeah, I was just absolutely for the interviewing skills. It's, you know, not only knowing how to ask good questions that probe into the right areas and get people to unravel and unpack the onion of their psyche, but also to turn those into actionable deliverables for people who are not ethnographers. So how to turn that into a set of technical requirements, or to turn that into an infographic that someone can actually use to then share that more widely. I think that's the bridge that's really interesting to make, is the elicitation, but then the capture and the transformation of what you get out of those interviews into solid knowledge products. And then for the politicking, I've had the pleasure and pain of working for a number of UN organizations and other intergovernmental organizations, and it takes about 8 times the amount of time to do a project there than it would for like a regular corporation. And the amount of diplomacy that one must use when trying to prioritize projects, even requirements within a project, to trying to do a taxonomy with a room full of, you know, intergovernmental employees is quite the challenge. I'll just put it that way.
So to answer Leah's question then, do you have a key trick that you use to reply diplomatically? If you're developing a knowledge product and people are coming back to you with insights, and you're thinking to yourself, yes, but you're not the target, you know, like you're not the target audience for this particular knowledge product. So we're trying to create something that's speaking to this group and not you. So how do you address that problem?
I do it through a lot of data. So I actually come prepared to these kinds of meetings and discovery sessions with lots of data, armed to show them how people are doing things that we can see in the analytics. So whenever we say no to something, we try to justify why. And I also find that just documenting someone's concern, even though you may not do anything about it, often placates people, makes them feel like at least they've been heard. So consulting and design is a little bit adjacent to therapy. So as long as someone feels like they got their piece out and you wrote it down somewhere, even though someone may never look at that document, it seems to help defuse the situation.
Excellent. It's really,
Excellent.
really
Thank
great. So how about I spotlight Laura? Is that okay, Juanita?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, great. Thank you, Stephanie.
Wow, it's going to be hard to follow up after all of those. I mean, it's
No.
well, it's interesting hearing everybody, because none of that really resonated personally with me, and we all come from this library background, so it just shows the depth of what we do in our profession.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, some of those things I could relate to that with my work. I work in DAM, Digital Asset Management. I'm at Red Hat, which is based in Raleigh. That's about an hour away from me, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm in Chapel Hill. So hi, Leah. I know you're down the street from me. Red Hat, I've been here almost 6 months. So because with COVID and everything, I had only really been here for about 2 months before everything shut down. So I actually work remotely to begin with. So this just, I just haven't really seen my coworkers in a while, and I was still kind of getting up to speed. So let's see if I can explain a bit about what I do at Red Hat. To start, I'd like to talk about how I got here too, because it seems like we all had similar paths. I went to school as a music performance major and my violin's over there. That didn't work out, but actually my undergrad is, I went to Hofstra. I went to Hofstra on Long Island and got a degree in television production in German, which that's a story for another day, but I worked in TV production, and I had worked in libraries in middle school, high school, college, just, you know, as an hourly job, you know, just something to do. But when I started working in television, I was a technical director. So I was the one punching all the buttons during the live show. They say take 2, I'd take 2. But what they didn't do was organize their B-roll and their footage. So if we had a follow-up story, or we needed generic video of teenage drivers or people, you know, people smoking or whatever it was, they could never find it. So I started to digitize, catalog, and just control all of our footage for the station where I worked back in Michigan. And they said, hey, that's really helpful. We had a database. We could do keyword searches for Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and find footage if we needed it in a pinch. So I moved to Baltimore and did that for Sinclair Broadcast Group at a corporate level. And then I moved to Chicago and thought, oh, I'll just go get a job at WGN. And when I went there, they're like, yeah, we don't have librarians. We have an intern manage our footage. That's when I decided I should go get a master's in library science, because people will take me more seriously. So it wasn't until 2008 that I actually started library school, and I got a job about 2 months after I started my first semester as a video asset manager at a production company. And then I finally got into DAM about 10 years ago. while I was still in school. And it was interesting, the interview, I went in and they were looking for a digital asset specialist. Great interview. They were looking for someone who knew media formats and digital technology and production workflows, but was very detailed and organized. And they kept saying, we're not sure exactly what we're looking for, but we'll let you know. I was on the bus ride home from the interview when they offered me the job. That was the first time I knew what DAM was. So it's really only been 10 years I've been working in DAM, and I finished my master's in 2013. So that was kind of in the midst of all of this. But I've worked on the client and the vendor side now. Obviously, I'm at the client at Red Hat. They hired me as their very first DAM librarian. My actual title is Senior Business Analyst for Digital Asset Management. So Red Hat works in, let's see if I can describe this correctly, because it still confuses me what exactly we do. They work in cloud native technology products and services. So the content that we have in our DAM is marketing materials. I work in marketing operations, decided to wear my Mo shirt today. So the content we have is mostly text information like PDFs, white papers, data sheets. It's things that people within marketing will need for promoting or for sales and lead nurturing. So what happens is, our users are internal. They'll come to the DAM and they either need a specific file or they need something. Let's say they're nurturing a lead who is interested in cloud native technology. They need some more offers to engage them. And so they need to go into the DAM and search based on different criteria. So a lot of what I do, I'd say, is, information governance, user design, user experience. I heard someone else mention, translating business needs. I wouldn't call myself a very technical. I don't write script. I do a little bit of that in terms of the configurations. A lot of it is templated, but I sit down with our stakeholders. So I had a meeting just before this, and the meeting was basically someone saying, yeah, when I go to the DAM and search this phrase, it was like technical integration, cloud native documentation, I don't get what I'm looking for. And I said, well, it's not Google. You can't just type in a word and get it. We've configured facets. I've configured sort options. I've configured saved views and spaces that give you an entry point into our content. So it's a lot of user adoption, user training, customer success, which I think does relate a lot back to library science. But I sit down with a stakeholder and say, okay, so tell me the problem. It's almost like going to your shrink, like, okay, tell me what's bothering you. And I can't promise that I can fix it and give them exactly what they need. And I'm very open and honest about that. But I say, okay, here's what I think we can do. I have a sandbox environment. Let me see if this works. And I present it to them and they say, ooh, I like that, but what about this? Can we change the label? Can you put it on the top right? Can we do it like this? And, I have a couple iterations, send it back, get approval, and then push it over to production. So I don't know if that explains exactly what I do, but as a librarian, I'm helping people also as a reference librarian. People say, hey, how do I find this? So I like the term someone coined when I worked at Sears Holdings Corporation. They said, oh, you're looking for something? Just Foogle it. Ask Laura Fu because she can find anything. And that's what I aim to do. Yeah, but I've tried to think, like, would it be like FU with a line over it? Because it's, yeah. I mean, I'm Fu, F. I know a Fu who's FOO, but I'm from the FU lineage. So, yeah. So working in DAM with the last name of FU has brought up many jokes.
I've been biting my tongue the entire time, Laura.
I've heard them all, I think. But yeah, so that's DAM in a nutshell.
Okay, so again, I'm fascinated by you were working in television, you organized the B-roll, and for some reason you thought to yourself, that sounds like a librarian. See, I think a lot of people think to themselves, oh, that sounds like an MBA. Why don't I go do an MBA? So again, what inspired you to say that's library science?
I don't know if I would use the term inspired. It wasn't until after I did it that I realized this is what I was meant to do. I mean, I worked in a library in middle school. I created the sheet music library for my orchestra in high school, and they still use it. So my handwriting is still on the sheet music.
Oh, wow.
And I graduated in '98. So, I mean, like, that really means a lot to me that they still use it. but you know, I was working in television only because the whole music thing didn't work out. So I didn't love being in television news. I loved structure. I think I have a bit of OCD, but you know, I moved to Chicago and I thought, well, this is what I do. This is what I know how to do. And if they're not going to hire me, I was like, I'm single. I'm in my 20s. I need a job. So I was a good student. Why not just go back to school? That'll make my dad happy. So that was kind of the inspiration of, that's what you do. You learn. So I started at Dominican University in Chicago in the fall of 2008, and I started my first job in video asset management in December of 2008. So it just kind of happened at the same time. But once I got to school and I started taking these classes in RDF ontologies and CSS coding and user experience and information architecture, I was like, oh my goodness, they're speaking they're talking how I talk. Like, there are people who do this professionally and enjoy it. I can talk about taxonomy with people and they get excited. So it was kind of like a reverse, oh, I found my place.
That's fantastic. Have you ever talked to Stephanie, by the way? Do you know Stephanie?
Yes, I spoke at Taxonomy Boot Camp in maybe it was 2013, 2014. I don't know, but I know we've talked.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone who has the word taxonomy in their LinkedIn profile, I've probably hit
yeah.
point.
Yeah.
The you know what I'm hearing, Juanita, is what all five, and I'm going to include now 6. I'm going to say Juanita Richardson. So for those of you that don't know, Juanita Richardson has also reset her career many times, and with new roles. So beginning as a corporate librarian, and then selling content in sales with Cedrom for many years, and then as a consultant with us. Oh, she was the best. And now as an academic library manager. And what all of you have in common is, first of all, and somebody used the term, maybe it was Katherine, or maybe it was Stephanie, that you're problem solvers. You all are problem solvers. In fact, that's what we are all as information professionals, but you've actually used the term. You're also risk takers, because you've all set out on different paths. So done the Great Reset, which I believe Jane does too. We had Dan Pontefract on a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about, you know, don't even think about the new normal. We need to be thinking about the Great Reset, and certainly you've all reset your careers many times, and you also have incredible confidence and presence. So I don't know, those of you listening or watching, to watch Stephanie come back on, not even blink an eye, right? The router gave up, she plugs it in, but she's back. Laura's been sitting there. You were in broadcasting. You know, I got hired because I was on television. Jane hired me because I've been on television. You know, Jim in working with politicians, Katherine in, you know, selling the university, like she sells the university, and going and working for the Red Cross, like really all of you, you know, Karen, who just went for the interview, you know, so I don't have an engineering degree. Oh, well, so what?
Exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, wait, God, we have somebody joining us now. We're 4 minutes from the end. Well, come on in, Noah.
But there's no after Zoom drinks?
There are, as a matter of fact. As a matter of fact, there are. We will be here. But I'm assuming that people came on to this call both to support SLACanada, and because they're interested in what the 5 of you, and I would say the 6 of you, are doing and have done with your degree of information science and the way that you've taken it in very different directions. And so what would do you have any words that you would give to some of your colleagues out there in terms of resetting and seizing opportunities?
That was going to be my last question to the group as well. Is there one piece of advice that you would give to either a new librarian who's looking to break into his or her career just to start with, or someone who's thinking, oh, you know, I'd really like to take this skill set and transition? Any thoughts?
Well, I'd say sometimes your next employer doesn't realize they need to hire you. I say that because the last 2 jobs I had, I didn't apply for. I wasn't looking, like, for example, Red Hat, it was all through LinkedIn. I got a message from a recruiter saying, hey, do you want to take a contract in Raleigh? I said, nope, I work full-time from home. I don't want to have to drive anywhere. And again, they reached out. 3 more recruiters reached out. And then my now manager reached out and said, look, I understand you don't want to leave, but let's talk. So I think people don't always understand what they're looking for. And it might be hard to find the position you're looking for because it's not posted, or maybe it's not posted how you think it would be. I mean, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, like, I've only had the title librarian once. So even just using keywords to try to find the job you're looking for, the employer might not know what they're looking for. I mean, I've been a digital asset manager, a digital asset specialist, a business analyst, a customer success manager. You know, so you have to be a little creative in your searching, but also knowing that maybe they don't realize they need you. Maybe they don't realize what the skill set is. If you find a job that looks interesting and you're like, hey, I could do this because of all the things that the 5, 6 of us have talked about, apply. Tell them this is why a librarian and information professional is successful in this role. A lot of places out there don't have librarians in the damn role. In a damn product owner role. Yeah, funny, the damn role, the GD role. And I've had to come in and clean up things because they said, oh, if we had someone with that mindset a year ago when we implemented this, things would be different. So I just don't think all employers realize what information professionals add. They think, oh, it's just a librarian is, you know, someone that shushes you in the back of a library. No, we do so many things. I've never worked in a traditional library. So
I would definitely, 100%, exactly what I did was, and what I would recommend is you're not selling your role, you're selling your skills. And frankly, don't use a title. Don't use a title, don't talk about a role, you just talk about what your skills are and how they're going to help that person solve the problems, right?
Right.
And just let go of the titles, let go of the lingo. Like, you know what your skill set is, you're selling your skill set.
That's great. That was Karen, by the way. I couldn't agree more.
Karen.
To me, the degree that we have is as close as the MBA, right? It has given us a set of skills, a way of thinking, some theoretical background, a perspective, and we take it and use it. I just want to give, so for those that have to go, we're getting all kinds of thank yous in the chat. If you have to go, go. We're going to stay here, and I'm going to invite the speakers for a drink afterwards. But Jim, have you got? Here, I'm spotlighting you, Jim.
Well, one thing, a couple of things I just want to add to those points, and one is to sort of you have to do a good job of sort of breaking the stereotypes, right? So to Laura, to your point about the shushing and the fact that, we don't all have buns in my hair, although I haven't had a haircut since this started. Yeah, so maybe I will have one soon. But so that's number one that I think appreciate. But I think also to highlight something that Stephanie pointed out, which is super important, was sort of the knowing what questions to ask. And I think that's a great skill that librarians have in the sense of knowing what questions to ask is able to find out what they're actually looking for, what they need it for, and to help develop those pathways. But it also helps you to know who you can turn to or what resource you can turn to in order to find a solution, right? So to get to the problems, the root of the problem, and further down the solution pathway. And I'll just use an example where I was able to actually do that in government, when I worked in government, and to be able to find several $100 million for an organization because I knew the questions to ask, I knew the right points to look to get, how we can connect the information that we had or the resources, and then connect it to a solution that was viable. And I think that being able to make those connections through the right questions is super important.
Right, right. Making connections for sure. Katherine.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what others have said certainly apply in my field. I found that one of the challenges in finding roles was because I'm kind of a builder. I like to come in and start things up. And what's happened, honestly, in a lot of my jobs, whoever's in charge of hiring someone in my role has been told, listen, you need to hire a researcher. But that person's experience with prospect research, it may have been negative, it may have been non-existent, it may be just something on their list of things to do. They don't really understand what they need. So part of my role has been to come in and say, okay, this is why you need this, and then build it. And then, you know, find my next project. And it's, you know, I try not to worry about titles. You know, in nonprofit, because the salaries tend to be lower, people get offered, you know, senior executive director of something because they're only making $30,000 a year and they won't pay their employees, so they give them better titles. So I would say to anyone looking in the field, don't worry about the title. Find an organization that matches what you're interested in and where you can actually apply your skills. So I liked Ryerson University. It's kind of the underdog university in the city of Toronto. There's, you know, it's a newer university. There's lots of innovation happening. They need a lot of new Capitol buildings. And because it's younger, they don't have, you know, a legacy of, you know, generations of alumni with deep, deep pockets. So it makes the strategies different than I would use at another more established university. So I like that challenge, and you know, I got the job because, you know, there was a formal process. It's a unionized position. There's, you know, all kinds of formalities to go through. But I called the hiring manager and we had a chat, and that's how we ended up there.
I think this is great, and I want to add my thanks to Juanita and Rebecca, to all of you for, you know, sharing your journey and your roles, etc. And I just, before, you know, we can continue to chat, but I wanted to make sure everybody knew that next month in June, we're going to actually be talking about how everybody's been doing over the last number of months and what's different, and, you know, just reflect on how we've all been. So it was originally to be a discussion of what happened at the SLA conference, but since it's not happening in June, we're just going to have a chat.
We are going to use the breakout rooms at that point. You are welcome to have a libation and learn session or a quarantini session, whatever you like.
Way ahead of you.
But there we go. We're gonna put people into breakout rooms so that you can do some networking. I think that we all really missed that, and I did it yesterday with a group. It was fab. I had to break them apart.
So I think Jane, the June session is called, it's June 18th, and it's called Seizing the New World. I think we had a title. So
yes, I called the two of them. Yes, I called the two of them. They're both Reset Part 1 and Reset Part 2. So
beautiful. Reset
Part 1 is around roles, you know, different directions for people to go. Thank you so much to all of our speakers, and thank you, Juanita, for stepping in at the last minute and moderating. You did a fabulous job, of course. And Part 2 is going to be, you know, how are people doing and where to from here.
Beautiful.
Okay.
One last word. I wanted to say what I think that this panel demonstrated, and Rebecca and Jane as well, and Stephen and his comments, many comments came from Stephen, is the passion we bring to the table. And if you can convey passion to a potential employer, I think you've got the job. Anyway, there we are. Thanks all. I'm going to go get my libation right now. Are we staying on the? Are we staying here, Rebecca,